Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parirajakacharya Asto Tarasata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Scheduled Incarnations and their specific functions. Text number 6. Dharmasya jaksha duritaya najishta mahotyam. Dharmasya daksha duritaya excuse me. Dharmasya daksha duritaya janishta mahotyam. Narayano nariti sratapa prabhava. Narayano Narayiti Swatapa Prabhava Drishtvatmano Bhagavato Niyamavalopyam. Excuse me. Sorry. Drishvatmano Bhagavato Niyamavalopam Devyas Twananga Pitana Gatitum Nashekuhu Devyas Twananga Pritina Gatitam Nasheku Dharmasya of Dharma, the controller of religious principles. Daksha, one of the Prajapatis. Duhitari, unto the daughter. Ajanishta, took birth. Murtyam, of the name Murti. Narayana, Narayan. Nara. Iti, thus. Swatapaha, personal penances. Prabhava, strength. Drishtva, by seeing. Atmanaha, of his own. Bhagavata, of the personality of Godhead. Niyama avolapam, breaking the vow. Devyaha, celestial beauties. Two, but. Anangapritanaha, companion of Cupid. Gatitum, to happen. Na, never. Shekhu, made possible. Translation: to exhibit his personal way of austerity and penance. He appeared in twin forms as Narayan and Nara in the womb of Murti, the wife of Dharma and the daughter of Daksha. Celestial beauties, the companions of Cupid, went to try to break his vows, but they were unsuccessful, for they saw that many beauties like them were emanating from him, the personality of Godhead. Do you repeat the English? To exhibit his personal way of austerity and penance. He appeared in twin forms as Narayan and Nara in the womb of Murti, the wife of Dharma and the daughter of Daksha. Celestial beauties, the companions of Cupid, went to try to break his vows, but they were unsuccessful, for they saw that many beauties like them were emanating from him, the personality of Godhead. Who was supposed to give class this morning? Who was?
That's Roster. Yeah, I checked the board to see what Roster.
Yeah, but I'm just Johnny come lately. Who would have been on otherwise? Well, I can see why he backed out. You wait till you hear the purport. Purport. The Lord, being the source of everything that be, is the origin of all austerities and penances also. Great vows of austerity are undertaken by sages to achieve success in self-realization. Human life is meant for such tapasya, with the great vow of celibacy or brahmacharya. In the rigid life of tapasya, there is no place for the association of women. And because human life is meant for tapasya, for self-realization, factual human civilization, as conceived by the system of Sanatana Dharma, or the school of 4 castes and 4 orders of life, prescribes a rigid disassociation from women in 3 stages of life. In the order of gradual cultural development, one's life may be divided into 4 divisions: celibacy, household life, retirement, and renunciation. During the first stage of life, up to 25 years of age, a man may be trained as a brahmachari under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, just to understand that woman is the real binding force in material existence. If one wants to get freedom from the material bondage of conditional life, he must get free from the attraction for the form of woman. Woman, or the fair sex, is the enchanting principle for the living entities, and the male form, especially in the human being, is meant for self-realization. The whole world is moving under the spell of womanly attraction, and as soon as a man becomes united with a woman, he at once becomes a victim of material bondage under a tight knot. The desires for lording it over the material world, under the intoxication of a false sense of lordship, specifically begin just after the man's unification with a woman. The desires for acquiring a house, possessing land, having children, and being prominent in society, the affection for community and the place of birth, and the hankering for wealth, which are all like phantasmagoria or illusory dreams, encumber a human being, and he is thus impeded in his progress towards self-realization, the real aim of life. The brahmachari, or a boy from the age of 5 years, especially from the higher castes, namely from the scholarly parents, the Brahmins, the administrative parents, the Kshatriyas, or the mercantile or productive parents, the Vaishyas, is trained until 25 years of age under the care of a bona fide guru or teacher, and under strict observance of discipline, he comes to understand the values of life along with taking specific training for a livelihood. The brahmachari is then allowed to go home and enter household life and get married to a suitable woman. But there are many brahmacharis who do not go home to become grihastas, householders, but continue the life of Naishtika brahmacharya without any connection with women. They accept the order of sannyas, or the renounced order of life, knowing well that combination with women is an unnecessary burden that checks self-realization. Since sex desire is very strong at a certain stage of life, the guru may allow the brahmachari to marry. This license is given to a brahmachari who is unable to continue the way of Naishtika brahmacharya, and such discriminations are possible for the bona fide guru. A program of so-called family planning is needed. The householder who associates with woman under scriptural restrictions after a thorough training of brahmacharya cannot be a householder like cats and dogs. Such a householder, after 50 years of age, would retire from the association of woman as a vanaprastha to be trained to live alone without the association of woman. When the practice is complete, the same retired householder becomes a sannyasi, strictly separate from woman, even from his married wife. Studying the whole scheme of disassociation from women, it appears that a woman is a stumbling block for self-realization, and the Lord appeared as Narayan to teach the principle of womanly disassociation with a vow in life. Being envious of the austere life of the rigid brahmacharis, would try to cause them to break their vows by dispatching soldiers of Cupid. But in the case of the Lord, it became an unsuccessful attempt when the celestial beauties saw that the Lord can produce innumerable such beauties by his mystic internal potency, and that there was consequently no need to be attracted by others externally. There is a common proverb that a confectioner is never attracted by sweetmeats. The confectioner who is always manufacturing sweetmeats has very little desire to eat them. Similarly, the Lord, by his pleasure potential powers, can produce innumerable spiritual beauties and not be the least attracted by the false beauties of material creation. One who does not know alleges foolishly that Lord Krishna enjoyed women in his Rasa Leela in Vrindavan, or with his 16,000 married wives at Dwarka. Dharmasya jaksha duhitar yajanishta murtyam narayano nara iti swatapa prabhavaha Drishtatmano bhagavato niyamavalopam devyastvananga pritana gatitum nashekahu. To exhibit his personal way of austerity and penance, he appeared in twin forms as Narayan and Nara in the womb of Murti, the wife of Dharma and the daughter of Daksha. Celestial beauties, the companions of Cupid, went to try to break his vows, but they were unsuccessful, for they saw that many beauties like him were emanating from him, the personality of Godhead. Umagyanati mirandasya gyananjana shalakaya chakshurun militam jena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savarutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakanvitam Scha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pracharane, Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarane. Mukam karoti vachalam, pangum langayate girim, jatkripa tamahan pande, Shri Gurun Dinatarnam. There's an embedded verse in the purport here from the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Srila Prabhupada is describing how the whole world is moving under the spell of womanly attraction, and as soon as a man becomes united with a woman, that verse is from, it goes on there, it's from the 5th canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, verse number 8, the teachings of Lord Rishabhdev to his sons. And I think to give a further perspective on what is being discussed here, I'd like to read that verse and its purport, if you bear with me for a moment. The verse is Punsang Striya Mituni Bhavametam Tayo Mito Hridaya Granti Mahu Ato Griha Chetra Sutapta Vitai Janasya Mohoya Maham Mameti. The translation is the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Purport. Sex serves as the natural attraction between man and woman, and when they are married, their relationship becomes more involved. Due to the entangling relationship between man and woman, there is a sense of illusion whereby one thinks, this man is my husband, or this woman is my wife. This is called Hridaya Granti, the hard knot in the heart. This knot is very difficult to undo, even though a man and woman separate, either for the principles of Varnashram or simply to get a divorce. In any case, the man always thinks of the woman, and the woman always thinks of the man. Thus, a person becomes materially attached to family, property, and children, although all of these are temporary. The possessor, unfortunately, identifies with his property and wealth. Sometimes, even after renunciation, one becomes attached to a temple or to the few things that constitute the property of a sannyasi. But such attachment is not as strong as family attachment. The attachment to the family is the strongest illusion. In the Satya Samhita it is stated, Brahmadya Yagya Valkyadya Muchyante Stri Sahayana Bodhyante Kechanai Te Sham Vishesham Cha Vidu Vidu. Sometimes it is found among exalted personalities like Lord Brahma that the wife and children are not a cause of bondage. On the contrary, the wife actually helps further spiritual life and liberation. Nonetheless, most people are bound by the knots of the marital relationship, and consequently they forget their relationship with Krishna. I wanted to read that to give a broader perspective, because this whole issue of women being the cause of bondage in the material world can become a very vexed issue, especially while we are all still within the bodily conception of ourselves, either as a man or as a woman. We need to elevate the discussion immediately to the platform that Krishna elevates the discussion to at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, when he begins to instruct Arjuna, because Arjuna, speaking learned words, gives a whole rundown on why he shouldn't be fighting in this battle. And it's all based upon family and bodily connections, teachers, gurus, teachers, brothers, cousins, fathers, sons are all there on the battlefield. And Arjuna is overwhelmed by his attachment to these on the basis of bodily attachment within this realm of material existence. And we see that Krishna immediately elevates the discussion to the spiritual platform, which is a very important thing to understand, because it begins by explaining that never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. This material bodily existence is a temporary one. It's a covering of ourselves. These material bodies, when we can talk about these material bodies in the objective sense of these material bodies, but in the subjective sense it means these two material bodies. This gross material body made of earth, water, fire, air and ether, and the subtle body made of mind, intelligence and false ego. And in this verse we just read, Srila Prabhupada mentions the term misconception, that the basic principle, I'll just read it again. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to, and then it goes on. But the point I wanted to stress here is the word misconception. Of course, conception is a very interesting word in itself. Actually, we have got this gross material body due to actually having conceived of it ourselves within the subtle body from a previous life. That is called conception. There's two ideas of conception. The subtle conception of in the mind. We have a concept in the mind, and then we become a conception within the womb of a mother, a gross conception. So conception applies to something that's carried in the mind and something that is carried in the body. But here the point is made that anybody in the material world is a misconception. Anybody. Take your pick. 8,400,000 species. Now there's another interesting word, species. We all have the understanding of species from our high school biology days, where we learn about the Linnaeus way of ordering species. And we think, well, species, when Prabhupada says species, it means that. But actually, it's a much broader thing than that. 8,400,000 species doesn't mean that, that includes all the species of dogs that exist. Dog is one species. Then within that species, there's infinite variegatedness. So when we think of it in that terms, 8,400,000 species of bodily form that we can have in infinite variegatedness under the combined influence of the three modes of material nature, it becomes inconceivable how many forms there are in this material world. And they all come in male variety and female variety. Take your pick. You want to have a female one or you want to have a male one? You want to be a male giraffe or you want to be a female aardvark? Somewhere along the line, this body comes about as a misconception of who you are or who you want to be in your mind. And Krishna is very, very kind. Very, very kind. Whatever you want, he'll give it to you. We are all here in this material world because we want to be. Krishna doesn't want us to be here. He didn't want us to come. We broke up with Krishna. We broke up our relationship with Krishna. Because we wanted to enter this material world and live like Krishna, as the center of everything, as the enjoyer of it all. And we see it's a far out place. There's so much variety, so many places you can go. And what to speak of on this planet. Once you start to study Vedic literature, you say, wow, there's a whole universe here. And there's ways and means to go anywhere. Anywhere you want to go, you can go there. Krishna's very kind. He provides a way for us to fulfill our desires. And those desires actually are innumerable. As soon as we, the living entity, come in contact with the mode of passion, with the root desire to enjoy in the material world, through contact with the mode of passion, those desires expand exponentially. And we really come to understand that once we start to take a vow to not gratify our senses through meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling. After the first honeymoon period of ecstasy, of experiencing Krishna's presence in your life, getting the higher taste, then at a certain point all these desires for material things start popping up. And it's appalling. We all become appalled. Oh my God, I've got so many desires in my heart. I want so many things in this world. How to deal with that? Well, in the past, we dealt with that by conceiving of, oh, that person looks pretty cool. I wish I'd like to be like that. Or, oh, horses really seem to be very free the way they run around the paddocks. And look at the birds flying in the sky. Wow, isn't that amazing? I'd like to do that. Dun, 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 dun. And one thing leads to another. And in this way, we are trapped on this wheel of samsara in this material world. Sometimes going up to heavenly planets, sometimes going down to hellish conditions, sometimes living in animal species, sometimes living in insect species, sometimes living in reptile species, sometimes living in aquatic species, sometimes living as a germ or a virus. And there's a very nice little purport about this in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explains how in this bodily conception of life, under this misconception, we are trying to enjoy what is manifest before us by the three modes of material nature, and we experience good and evil in all kinds of species of life. And in all situations, we think ourselves the master of our destiny. We think, this is all mine. One time Prabhupada in a lecture said that even the sparrow flying in the sky is thinking, this is my sky. This initial trap is this false ego. Prakriti kriyamanani gunaikamani savashaha ahankara vimudatma katahamiti manyate. Ahankara vimudatma. Under the influence of the false ego, the living bewildered by the false ego, the living entity, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are actually being carried out by nature. And it's all because of a misconception that I am this body. But then not just that I am this body, but you are that body. And the most attractive body in the whole of the material world is the female human body, which manifests in so many varieties within 400,000 species of human life. But there's the old joke that a woman's form or a guitar is like the beautiful form of a woman with strings attached. And this is the point of material life. It's conditional upon certain responsibilities that you must fulfill in every circumstance of your life. And if you don't fulfill your responsibilities in whatever circumstance of life you're in, then you will become more and more entangled in the reactions to your activities in the material world. And the responsibility for all human beings is to get out of this material world. Not get further into it, but get out of it. That is the special facility on this huge wheel that we're on, this wheel of samsara. Like, you think about it, the Ferris wheel. You buy your ticket, you get on, and you get in your seat, or like in I don't know if they got them in Australia, but in England they had the Millennium Wheel. They had this huge, in London, sorry, they had this huge Ferris wheel. And it had like, not just seats, but just cabins that 12, 15 people could get in. It was very interesting because people would get in and it would go very slowly around. And you'd buy a ticket that would give you so many turns on the wheel. And of course, you know, people who had lots of money, they'd go there and they'd book one of these cabins for like, 2-3 hours or even longer. And they'd have a party. And the thing about it is, once you're on the wheel, you have to stay there until your seat or your cabin comes to that platform and it stops. And then you're given a choice. You can say, oh, well, actually, here, I want to stay on. And you pay some more money and around you go again. Or you get off. And that's the human form of life in this wheel of samsara. There's a point, this platform called the human form of life. And most specifically, the human form of life on this planet. We might think, well, that's all very convenient, isn't it? Your philosophy is just saying that this planet is a far out place. Well, yes, this planet is the most far out place in the whole universe, because this is the only place in the entire universe where unlimited incarnations of the Lord appear for all kinds of reasons. This is the only place where Krishna appears. And he appears to help us regain the correct conception of ourselves. And he begins it right from the get-go with Arjuna. Never was there a time when you and I did, while speaking learned words, you're an idiot, Arjuna. This is stupid what you're saying. It is learned, and it's based in Veda, all these moral principles of social dealing and so on and so forth that Arjuna outlines in the verses of the first chapter. But Krishna just immediately disses it all. Because you're lamenting for what is not worthy of grief. And then a little later he says, Traigunya Vishaya Veda. These Vedas, these three Vedas, Traigunya. He doesn't mean Shama Veda, he means Rig, Yajur, and Atava Veda. The Shama Veda literally does deal directly with Krishna. But the other three, Vishaya, they deal with the Vishaya. They deal with how to gratify your senses in the material world. Traigunya Vishaya Veda. Nistraigunya. They deal with the life in the three modes of material nature. Therefore, Krishna says, Nistraigunya. You become transcendental to these modes. And of course, we know Krishna is going to tell Arjuna how to do that. But in the process of telling him, right from the foundational instructions, he's making it very clear that you have to have the correct conception of yourself. And you have to understand that this bodily conception of yourself is a misconception. But then, of course, our philosophy is so perfect that even with all the attributes of this misconception, you can engage in devotional service to the Lord. Such a perfect and complete philosophy we have. But first of all, we have to become free from the misconception that I am this body. At least with our intelligence, we might not have complete realization of that. That's an interesting word, isn't it? Realization. That eyes at the end of words, it's a nationalize, galvanize, modernize. What does it mean? Let's look at what I came here to New Govardhana after not having been here for quite some time, and I saw there's been quite a bit of modernization going on here. What does it mean? It means something was in one condition, and then something was done to it to bring it more in line with the present situation. That's modernization. You don't destroy anything. It's not like I came here to New Govardhana and thought, nothing that was here before is here now and it's all new. No, everything that was here before is still here, but there's been things that have modernized the place. So what does it mean to realize? It means to make real. To realize oneself is to bring oneself out of a situation of unreality into reality. And this entire universe and everything in it is categorized in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam as unreal, but so powerful that it appears real, even to great sages and demigods, what to speak of little squibs like us. There's a great challenge thrown down here in this. Because the influence of the three modes of material nature are so powerful They are so powerful. And we are under the first manifestation of the mode of ignorance, ahankara. We are under the influence of this most subtle of energies, most malleable, most mutable energy of the Lord, the false ego. That enables us to imagine anything. Anything. Therefore, later on then, in the second chapter, after Krishna's dismissed the Vedas and started talking about yoga, and how through the practice of yoga you can transcend this, Arjuna asked, well, how can you tell when somebody's in this transcendental consciousness? And the first thing Krishna says is when a person gives up all desire for sense gratification, all desires for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction. Concoction and conception are synonymous words. Concocting something is actually a form of conceiving something. But concoction also carries the idea of, well, I'll take a bit of this, I'll take a bit of that, let's shake it up and see what happens. Watch it fizz. And it blows up in your face. Because you have a misconception, a fundamental misconception of what all this is and what I am. This has to be cleared up right from the beginning, at least with our intelligence. And so therefore the first thing that we have to really, really understand is the principle that is being explained here, that which binds us into this bodily conception of ourselves and therefore binds us into the repetition of birth, death, disease and old age through 8,400,000 species of life. That principle which brings about the bondage is our sex desire. Our desire for material sex life. And the strong word is used there. This brings about the Hridaya Granti. Hridaya Granti. What a beautiful language Sanskrit is. It's just, there's so much meaning right there in the sound of the word. Hridaya Granti. Granti. Tight. And then you see a real knot, right? You tie a real knot, like a reef knot. And you can take like a big rope, 2 pieces of rope, and you can tie this big reef knot. Then you do a tug of war with that rope, and the knot just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. You can't break it. It doesn't unravel. It doesn't undo. It just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So you take this desire and you then extrapolate it through countless lifetimes, through countless creations in the material world in which you have to take a body. And how do you take a body? As a result of sex. And how do you give a body to somebody else? As a result of sex. So the whole material world is going on like this. We're supposed to finish at 8:30. Yeah? Well, that's probably a good time to finish. It's 8:30. Hare Krishna. Maybe we can do just 5 minutes. Any reflections or questions that anyone has? Yes.
So, in the church, which I don't know why
the male section of personalities coming into Krishna consciousness. We are encouraged toward brahmacharya, and this philosophy is given that actually, he says in the beginning of the Bible that human life is meant for tapasya, and spiritual realization and sex life go built together. Therefore, it's best to commit to brahmacharya and I'll stay brahmacharya.
Yes.
Don't get married. And Prabhupada speaks in the Bible, it's often that to get married is considered a fall down from the platform of brahmacharya.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Where did you read that in Prabhupada's books?
Many times.
That becoming a married person is a fall down from brahmacharya? Oh, I'm sorry, Prabhu, that is absolutely not correct. And that you will not find in Srila Prabhupada's books. And if you want to get married, you still have to be a brahmachari. Read the story of King Priyavrata. He was a grihastha brahmachari. Brahmachari is not, grihastha life is not grihamedi life. Grihamedi life is unrestricted sexual activity. Grihastha life is regulated sexual activity. And therefore it is not a breach of brahmacharya. But what is your question?
So I was going to continue
And indeed, well, I'll finish one point. Becoming a grihastha is actually a graduation from the brahmachari ashram, because you have to take responsibility for the brahmacharis, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis. And the women. So go figure. I don't mean to be, but this misconception has to go. All ashrams are valid and necessary. Taking grihastha life from brahmachari life is not a fall down. Fall down means illicit sex in any ashram.
Yeah. So when I said fall down, I didn't say fall down in and of itself. I said fall down from the platform of brahmacharya.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's just not. And if you want, most men have to become grihasthas. So if you enter grihastha life thinking, oh, I've fallen down, I've failed, what kind of life are you going to have? What kind of life are you going to have? What kind of sense of your own worth are you going to have? Taking grihastha ashram from brahmachari ashram is not a fall down from brahmacharya. It is a further responsibility of brahmacharya. Yes, Prabhu? You have a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking very strongly about this because this is a pervasive misconception in our society, and it is very, very corrosive to the fabric of our society. And the people who suffer most are the women and the children as a result of this sick mentality. And you judge a society by how does it treat the cows, how does it treat the old men, how does it treat the women, and how does it treat the children. And if we have this toxic mentality that if you take grihastha ashram, you've fallen down from brahmacharya, then we've got a toxic society all the way down the line.
So the question would be, why is one encouraged to remain a brahmachari throughout and commit basically to the path of renunciation, progress on to vanaprastha and sannyas, and avoid entering into family life.
Because the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. Grihastha life is a very complex affair, and it is full of distractions and temptations. As the verse reads, Ato griha chitra sutta apta vitai. And Prabhupada elaborates that in the purport here. He says how the desire for lording it over the material world under the intoxication of a false sense of lordship specifically begins just after a man's unification with a woman. The desires for acquiring a house, possessing land, having children, and becoming prominent in society, the affection for community and the place of birth, and the hankering for wealth, which are all phantasmagoria or illusory dreams, encumber a human being, and he is thus impeded in his progress towards self-realization, the real aim of life.
So what would be the incentive to do that from the platform of the brahmachari?
We are not brahmacharis, grihastas, vanaprasthas, or sannyasas. When Lord Chaitanya was asked, what are you? He says, I'm not a brahmachari. Well, it was the challenge that was put to him that you're a sannyasi, you should be studying Vedanta. And he says, I'm not a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. I'm not a brahman, kshatriya, vaishya, or shudra. I am the servant of the servant of the servant, of the self-manifesting master of the gopis. So we are all eternal. Sorry?
What's the purpose of Varnashram?
The Varnashram is a instrument. It's a process that you can put yourself into. You don't become a brahmachari, you practice brahmacharya. Just like you don't become the prime minister, you occupy the position of the prime minister for some time. So you may occupy the position of a brahmachari or a brahmacharini for some time in your life or for your entire life. And indeed, if we had the proper start from age 5, then the chances are we could remain, all of us, complete brahmacharis for the rest of our lives. But even if we take to grihastha life, we still have to maintain brahmacharya. But it's a practice. It's not that I am a grihastha, you are a brahmachari, he is a sannyasi, she is a woman. This is all second nature. It's how to deal with the second nature. Yes? In order to get to the real essence of who we are. So we practice dasadas anudas in 4 ashrams. Yes? And my experience of brahmachari ashram was, best way to do it is to hit the road. Have a base. This is a good base to come back to. But when I was a brahmachari many years ago, the main activity was to just watch that road unwind and really not know where you were going to be from one day to the next, and just learn to depend on Krishna. Now, I want to apologize to you. I came out really strong on certain points. Please don't take it personally. I didn't mean it in a personal sense. But they are important points that I was making. And it's 20 to 9, so I think I should stop, yes? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.